the podcast with Dan Bardell and Gregg Evans.
Hello and welcome to 1874, the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Gregg Evans, as ever, to talk over what has been a monumental week for Aston Villa Football Club. So we're going to go back and talk about how Aston Villa have toppled Manchester City and Arsenal without conceding a goal in the last week or so. And Gregg's got some lovely, tasty inside information. I've read his piece with Jacob Tanswell this morning on the Athletics website, and Gregg has plenty of info, so it should be a really, really interesting podcast. Before we get into that, just a quick word about our sponsors, NordVPN. You can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to 1874.io/NordVPN. If you do that, you'll get a huge discount on everything they have to offer, and you'll also get 4 months for free. And if you don't like it, it's completely risk-free because you can get your money back after 30 days if you're not satisfied. Gregg, we did the show last week as Villa were about to embark on the kind of week where you think this is going to define where Aston Villa are going to be this season come May, or what Villa are going to be aiming for. Are Aston Villa now aiming to be title challengers, Gregg?
I mean, I think Aston Villa are aiming to be title winners. I think they're already in the challenge. I mean, we're safe to say now that Villa are title challengers. I'm okay. I'm sounding like I've changed my tune a little bit from last week.
You were happy with the point last week.
And look, we're 1 week on from me absolutely ridiculing you for suggesting that Villa should be even thinking about getting 6 points from it. But look, fair play. You know what you want. You know what you're expecting from this team. And they went and delivered, and I thought they were brilliant. Look, they were sensational against Man City. Very, very classy in their performance. A little bit of a different type of performance against Arsenal. They showed guts as well as the guile to get them over the line. And I think that's a sign of a good team. If they can go out and grind wins when they don't play as well, but see off some of the best teams in the division, then that's brilliant. And look, Villa are in the title race. Yeah, I don't care what other people are saying. I still think that Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool have a better chance of finishing above them. But, who's going to back against Villa now, the way they're performing?
I just want there to be as big a gap between 4th and 5th or 4th and 6th as possible, because at the moment we're still not 100% sure whether 5th will secure Champions League football. So to me, although I almost can't bring myself to say they're in the title race. I can't bring myself to think that just yet, although look, they're doing absolutely superbly. But I'm just looking at now, let's try and cement 4th. Let's try and get as far away from everyone else and kind of stay 3rd, 4th for as long as possible. And then we've just got an excellent chance of being in the Champions League. But not many teams will beat Arsenal and Manchester City this season. But to do it in the space of a few days with the same 11, without conceding a goal. We've been saying all season, well, not all season, but as the season's gone on, we're like, this is a serious team. Emery's a serious manager. Villa are going places. Started off thinking top 6. Then can we push towards Champions League football? And now people are talking about the title. But just how did Villa pull this off, Gregg?
Well, I mean, first of all, just going back to last week and before these 2 games, it felt like Villa did need to win one of these to really sort of cement themselves in people's thoughts, because okay, they're beating Tottenham, and okay, they're beating Tottenham last year, Newcastle and Brighton, and still look back at that Newcastle game and last season, the 3-0 victory, and thought that was the most complete performance of any Villa team I've ever watched. But the Man City game eclipsed that, just because of the level of opponent and just the way Villa went about it. So how did they do it? Well, I mean, how do they do it every week? It's a very specific, detailed plan for every team. Man City. Let's take Man City at the starting point. Unai Emery decided to train on the day of the game. Light session early in the morning. That was
has that ever happened before? Have we ever done that before?
I think it has happened before, but it's something. It's quite unique for this period of fixtures. And look, purely because Villa have got so many games, this season, and we're in a super intense period of the season. The the coaching team, alongside Unai Emery, have to get the schedule right. They have to look at the players' loads and see how much they're putting in and how tired they are and how much rest and recovery they're getting. And that's a real skill in itself. And the fact that Villa have got a very strong, support team around the manager is certainly helping, because they've got all, obviously, those details. But look, that was one of the things they decided on. And we said last week, didn't we, Dan? If Villa were going to go and beat Man City, they had to be brave and positive and believe in themselves and play the way that they've been playing all season. Just go and put that into practice. I watched Man City against Chelsea when they drew 4-4, and Chelsea were brilliant at breaking through their press. And pretty much that's what Villa did. They were confident playing out from the back. They didn't change the game plan. There were some, minor tweaks, because you're coming up against an elite side and you need to give them a little bit more respect. But I think that's the biggest thing that they didn't do. They didn't show Man City the respect that other teams do, and they went and put it on them from the front foot.
Yeah, I think that was the most impressive thing that, like you say, we said there's no point sitting back, and Emery said this as well, there's no point sitting back and waiting to be killed. And I think the biggest thing that we've taken from this week is that Villa can win in different ways, because they did dominate that game against Manchester City, and I think that might be my favourite Villa game ever. There's a few other contenders in there, but I think that might be my favourite game ever. The Arsenal game was a very different type of victory. Now, I don't know, was that the way Villa played against Arsenal? It did end up being they did have to sit back a bit, and because I think they were lacking energy. But by the end of the game, was that performance by design, like the Manchester City one was, or would they have liked to have played the same way as they did against City against Arsenal?
Look, Emery's big words are control, isn't it? He always wants his team to be able to control the game, and typically that's by having possession and taking the pressure off, from and basically not letting the opponents have the ball. It was a little bit different against Arsenal, and I thought it was always going to be a tougher game, purely because they gave so much against Man City, and it's really difficult for a group of players, an unchanged team who put everything into that Man City game, to then come out and be as expressive against Arsenal. And look, they tried it, didn't they? It was clever to move the kickoff around and attack the whole end. I thought that was a clever plan. They've seen Villa do that on previous occasions. But look, what Emery likes from his team, and one of the real targets for this game, the Arsenal game, was to go on the front foot, get that first goal, and then Villa are the only team, I think, in the Premier League who haven't dropped points from winning positions. Is that correct? I think so. There's a real steel and robustness to Villa there that they can hold on to the victories. And look, they went out, not all guns blazing, but they really put it on Arsenal, I think, early in that game. And that move for the goal was fantastic. After that, they had to soak it up a bit. Emery wouldn't have been as pleased with the performance, for sure. But my word, the result, that was the big one for him. Privately, I thought publicly, he was very coy and cautious, wasn't he? Going into the games, he was like, there's still 6 teams that are probably better than us, that have got a better chance of finishing when we're not really in the title race. Arsenal are a brilliant team, but privately, he desperately wanted to beat them, for obvious reasons.
Oh, yeah, I'm really, really pleased for him, actually, because he did take a lot of unfair criticism, and a lot of it was felt not personal, almost like bullying, cyberbullying, basically, Emery, when he was at Arsenal. And
his celebration at the end, that was the most pumped up I've probably ever seen him.
He'll have loved the fact that they won this game, and he'll have loved the fact that, he hadn't beaten Pep either. Let's remember, it's the first time he's beat Pep Guardiola in his career, so it's a stupendous few days for the manager as well. Villa just could not keep a clean sheet. We've said it for weeks and weeks and weeks. Why can't we keep a clean sheet? Even when we're comfortable in a game, we seem to ship a goal. And then the 2 best teams in the country rock up to Villa Park, and we keep 2 clean sheets, Greg.
Again, very impressive, isn't it? The way they shut out Man City to limit them to just a couple of shots on goal was so impressive. Bit of a different game against Arsenal. I thought, Arsenal, okay, you've got to score, but I thought they created enough good chances to score, didn't they? There was a couple of real clear-cut opportunities for them. Okay, McGinn and Martinez didn't really have much to do in terms of making saves, but I think some of the movements and the positions Arsenal got into were promising. And look, if you take the result away from it, forget the fact that Villa won 1-0, and you just look at the performance, Arsenal performed better than Villa on the day.
Yeah,
admittedly.
Agreed.
Yeah, so we're in agreement. We're in agreement with that, but. Forget about it, because Villa have shown enough over this season that they can go and perform well, and they did it 3 days earlier against who I still think are the best team in the division.
Best team in the
with,
world.
Yeah, and albeit with a couple of key absentees.
Yeah, that was Arsenal at full strength.
Exactly.
That was their best team. You might look at the Manchester City game like you're saying, people will say, Rodri was missing, who's a key component of Manchester City, and whenever he seems not to play, they don't seem to get a result. But I think Villa would have still put in a good display against Manchester City with Rodri there. I think Manchester City would have found it difficult with Rodri to contain Villa in that move. But that was Arsenal's first choice 11.
Yeah. There's not much more you can say about it. It was a brilliant victory. Not fortunate either. It was a different type of victory. Okay, it wasn't totally convincing, and they didn't dominate the ball, and they didn't have more possession, and they weren't peppering the Arsenal goal. But they did it in a different way, and it's hard to say this, isn't it? Because I do believe that Villa are in the title race, but
I can't believe I'm hearing these words come out of your mouth.
That's what champions do. They get results when they don't play at their best, and they win in different ways.
Yeah, I've been watching Liverpool recently. They keep finding a way to win, and they scored very, very late against Fulham. Looked like they were going to get a point against Crystal Palace, and they end up taking all three with a lovely goal from Harvey Elliott. So they've been finding ways to win games. Arsenal in the week found a way to win the game and scored in the 97th minute against Luton. And Arsenal came into that game with a little bit of momentum as well, and an extra day's rest. I do think that extra day's rest was quite pivotal. I think Villa applied the same day as Arsenal. I think you might have seen a little bit more from Villa going forward, but Villa always carried a threat. And one of my biggest takeaways from these last two games is Villa are going into the stoppage time 1-0 up against the two best teams in the division. And being honest, I never felt massively worried that the other team was going to score, especially the City game. Now I know you can say what you like about the Havertz handball, but unfortunately for Arsenal, they are the rules. If you score and a ball has hit a hand, that's the rule. It's not going to count. Were Villa a little bit fortunate with the penalty? I've watched that back this morning, and I sit in the whole 10. So when I saw it, I felt like Jesus was kind of initiating the contact and looking for it. But when I've watched it back, I do think if it was the other way around, I'd be saying it's a penalty in the modern day.
Yeah, I'm not. God, just not sure of it. I just didn't really think it was a penalty. I just didn't think there was enough. I just didn't think there was enough there. It felt like he just made the most of it. And okay, there was contact.
There was a penalty given that day, wasn't there? It was Palace Liverpool again, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but you look
probably
at
less contact, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, there was less contact, and it's probably without VAR. The Liverpool one, Kwanzaa on. Joao Kwanzaa on Mateta, that probably wouldn't have been. Well, it wouldn't have been given, I don't think, without VAR. It's not something that the referee would have looked at and thought immediately that's a clear penalty. So yeah, I don't like these discussions anymore, Dan. I have to admit, I'm getting bored of VAR, bored to death of it. To be honest, I think it's genuinely ruining the game. Look, I'd love to have the right answer to say what is the suggestion to make it better. I don't know that. I just think that penalties, and they're trying to stop goals. It feels like the officials are trying to stop goals. I mean, that's the we said last week, didn't we? You can't go to a game now and celebrate a goal because you're always worried about VAR. Now it just feels like that every game, I mean, every weekend there's something, isn't there? It's more than one controversy with VAR every week. It's frustrating. Sorry, I'm ranting a bit, but I don't think it was a penalty. Yes, there was contact, but I think it was soft.
I always forget about VAR at the game. So when Douglas Luiz scored the header against Manchester City that got disallowed, I was up going wild. Completely forgot that they could even get looked at and pulled back. Sometimes when you're in the moment of the game, and that Manchester, actually both these games, as a fan, sometimes you're there and you're watching it, but you can't. I felt in both of those games, like you're in a particular zone, and I felt like that in these last two games. And I don't remember feeling like that too often over the last few years in games. But Unai Emery's kind of given me that back, where you're so invested in what you're seeing and everything means something. We've got Villa under Paul Lambert, McLeish, etc. They were bad times, and sometimes they needed to win games to stay up. But needing to win games because you're riding high in the league, this took me back to like 98, 99 under John Gregory when Villa were top of the league at Christmas. And I loved that time. John Gregory is one of my heroes, and I loved that team as well. But I think I might love this team more, Greg.
I think the reason for that is because you've suffered a fair bit, and you realise now how good it is to be a good team again.
Forgotten
because of how bad some of the years have been. And it's very, very rare, really, that clubs break in to the so-called top 5 or 6 or whatever it's called now. Don't really think there is a term anymore because it's so loose. But it's very rare that a club that hasn't been there for a while jumps in. Newcastle had it last year. Leicester had it in 2015-16. I hope this isn't a lazy comparison, actually, but Leicester's attacking play, Aston Villa's attacking play is reminding me a little bit of Leicester during that title-winning year, with the likes of Vardy killing off teams ruthlessly when he's only given 1 or 2 chances. In a way, Watkins has done in some of the games. Feels like Mahrez's contributions are a little bit similar to Bailey's and Diaby's at times. They've got 2 brilliant central midfielders like Drinkwater and Kante.
Okay.
I'm being serious here.
I just remember Danny Drinkwater sweating.
But if you remember how brilliant he was for Leicester, you got to tip your hat to him. But the only thing that's different is defensively. I think that Leicester were very old school, weren't they, in their defence? A couple of proper defenders, shall we say, and in the heart of defence, Villa are a bit more cultured, I'd say. They like to play their way out of trouble, but also stick to their duties when they're needed. So, I hope that's not a lazy comparison, but the attacking play does remind me a little bit of them.
I said it on TalkSport yesterday. They asked me about the title challenge and what does this feel like. I said it does feel a little bit reminiscent to Leicester. I actually said it yesterday, but kind of like I'm looking at Newcastle last season because they got themselves into this kind of position this time last year, and then they didn't leave that top 4 space, and that I think that's what Villa should be aiming to do. I mean, look, Greg Evans has declared Aston Villa as title challengers and clicked that up. Right,
but I mean, they are now, aren't they? I still
15 games. I'm not sure. I can't believe I'm the one who's disagreeing with it. After 15 games, I think it's a bit soon.
My arguments, my points to justify why they are title contenders. Then, so over 39 games.
Yeah,
I think it is. Over 41 games, Villa have now picked up 84 points under Unai Emery. So this is nothing new, this season's form. It's been going on for a while. So that's top 3 form, I'd say. They've just beat the 2 best teams in the division, or 2 of the best 3 teams in the division, without conceding a goal. The points are already on the board. The teams below them are looking a little bit wobbly. Tottenham and Newcastle, their injuries are causing them big problems. Man United aren't convincing for me. Man City that have gone through their little bit of a wobble, but I think they'll get back to their best.
Yeah.
I'm not. I spoke to a couple of people connected to City, and they're not concerned at the moment. Their point was, their point was, look, we've been here before. I think last season they had fewer points than they got now. So it's not an issue. It's not an issue for them. They love catching, chasing, and trying to catch, and typically they'll probably go on and do it. Yeah. But Villa are in this race now. However you, whether Unai Emery likes it or not, or whether he wants to say it or not, Villa are in the race. And look, his message all along has been stay humble. Be humble, and great if that's what Villa want to do. That's what's got them there. To where they are. But look, privately, each and every one of those players and staff will know that they're in the title race. They might not get it done, but they're in it right now.
Yeah, I'm still like, if you offered me 4th now, I'd absolutely take it.
Fourth's the big picture, isn't it? You want to get into the Champions League, you want to increase the revenue, you want to be able to attract better players, you want those exciting nights at Villa Park, bigger nights than they're currently getting in Europe, and then be able to go and mix it with the best and show what they're capable of. Look, Newcastle had a great season last season. They did that. As you say, Dan, I think that's what Villa should be aiming to do. It's not quite going for them this year because they've had a lot of injuries, but look, they've had some brilliant nights in the Champions League already and aren't out of it yet.
Yeah. Do you think that now that, look, the home form has been scintillating for not far off a year now, I'd love them to go like 19 games at home, 20 games, so we could say that we went kind of like a whole season at home. Unbeaten. I mean, probably privately, the aim is to keep Villa Park just keep winning every game at Villa Park, and they do look like they can just keep churning out results at Villa Park. And you look at the next two home games are
Sheffield United and Burnley.
Sheffield United and Burnley. You're looking at probably, hopefully, without being complacent, the way Villa have brushed those kind of teams aside, you're expecting to get another 2 wins there. So you're looking at we could get to 17 going into the new year. I think a lot's been made of Villa's away form. There was people losing their mind, this time last week after we drew with Bournemouth. But if you're going to drop points against any of the last 3 games, you pick the Bournemouth game because what it does for you in the league table when you're up and around Arsenal and Man City, that does more for you winning those games rather than beating Bournemouth. Villa's away form actually isn't that bad. It's just that the home form is absolutely ridiculous. So every time they drop any kind of points away, people look at it and say, "Oh, we're not as good as away as we are at home."
But it's impossible to be.
We'd win every game if we were as good away from home as we were at home. But I actually think these last 2 games because they beat the 2 of the best, I actually think it might help them in the away games. Now, I think the players now are starting to think, we're a proper team. We are proper top level Premier League players. There's no better player in the Premier League than John McGinn at the moment, in my opinion. If anyone can name me one, I honestly don't think there's a better player in the Premier League in terms of form and what he's churning out week in, week out.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. I mean, up until this weekend, Declan Rice was the guy everybody was talking about. But John McGinn's just gone head to head with the so-called best midfielder on form in the Premier League and shown that he's better than him over 90 minutes. But yeah, I mean, look, we love the McGinn story, don't we? We love the fact that he's been at the club since 2018. He was Nassif Sawiris and Wes Eden's first signing, I think.
I can't remember. Was Andre Moreira first, Greg?
Surely not.
I can't remember. You might have been.
We'll have to double check. But it was in the first transfer window, wasn't it? It was the first transfer window. Was it the year Elmo came and Glenn Whelan? Was that the year before?
The year before, yeah.
Of course it was. Yeah, it was the year before. But yeah, look, McGinn came in the first window of Sawiris and Eden's. So he's been on this wonderful journey with the club all the way through. We sound like a broken record, but he's gone through all the hard times and helped Villa out of the Championship and establish themselves in the Premier League. And I mean, what must he think of this journey? He must feel invincible.
He must think, what on earth is coming next?
Yeah, exactly. He turns up to Villa in the Championship, gets them promoted, keeps them in the Premier League, establishes them in the Premier League, and he's now got them gets them into Europe, and he's now chasing the title or the Champions League at worst. And I mean, that's where I think Villa are at now.
Do you think that? Do you think it's Champions League at worst now?
I do, and I think the reason I say that, and people might shoot me down by saying,
I don't think they will. I think they'll shoot me down.
We're only 15 games into the season, etc. You can't be talking about how the league's going to shape up, etc. But it's the body of work over Emery's period that gives me so much optimism that Villa can keep this going. And for me now, the big picture is finishing the top 4. Dream about the title, of course. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But if Villa didn't finish in the top 4, and the Champions League places didn't go down to the top 5, in short, if Villa missed out on the Champions League, it would feel like a bit of a disappointment now, I think. It feels like they're there.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know whether look, deep down, I do think we're really in the mix for Champions League. Like, there's a strong possibility that we can get Champions League. I said that at the start of the season. I thought that Villa were capable of doing that. Looking around the Premier League, I didn't think Chelsea would make a big improvement, and they haven't. I thought Newcastle would find it hard. Tottenham, I thought, would struggle a little bit, but they had a brilliant start, and then they've been patchy recently. Manchester United just aren't up there at all. They've got no consistency whatsoever. And if I had to predict whether they would have beaten Bournemouth at the weekend, I would have said no. And I did say no, albeit I had it down for a draw. So there's those 3 teams that we keep talking about. But Villa are in there with them at the moment. Villa are as good as those teams generally in squad wise and things like that. Do you not think that will play a part as the season goes on?
Well, I mean, look, again, this sounds pretty ridiculous, doesn't it? But if you look at Man City's top sort of 13, 14 players,
I had no one to bring on against Villa,
when they're fit,
Yeah.
When they're all fit, Man City's top 13, 14 players are brilliant. And, they'll win the league if they all stay fit every year because they're that good. But you look at the bench against Villa, and I'm convinced Guardiola would have loved to have Ramsey coming off the bench for him or Villa's options compared to
I agree.
Oscar Bob and who's the other guy that come on, Kovacic, wasn't it?
Yeah, Kovacic is a decent player.
But yeah, look, I think Guardiola would have preferred to have Villa's bench than his bench in that game, just because there were so many options for Villa. Arsenal's squad is strong, clearly, but Villa have just beaten them. So, what where do we go from there? Liverpool's squad is brilliant. The story of their season so far is the fact that substitutes keep scoring and digging them out of a hole. That's because they've got such a strong squad. 5 brilliant attackers, 6 or 7 brilliant midfielders, a relatively strong defence. But, I just look at Villa's options now and I think that if a couple of players miss out, that they've got players that can come in. Tielemans wasn't getting a game, was he? And now he's come in and been very, very good. Diego Carlos has come in and taken a place. He hasn't played too much since he's joined the club. It just feels like everybody that comes into the team does a job now.
Yeah, let's talk about the goalkeeper then, because he was one of the narratives of the game. Obviously, Emery against his old team was a big narrative. The fact that Villa had just beaten Manchester City and were up with Arsenal was a big part of the narrative. But McGinn and Martinez against his old team, another clean sheet. He made one. It was actually a brilliant save. He just made it look really easy because he telegraphed exactly what Erdegaard was going to do. And his interview after the game with his cut on his eye was brilliant because he just said, "I'm a believer, mate." To hear him say that's someone who has won a World Cup and is the best goalkeeper in the world. I think that's probably a fact by this point. On TalkSport yesterday, I was asked about him, and I said he's a massive weirdo, but he's our weirdo. And as a Villa fan, you can't help but just to love him, but also like marvel and think, how have Villa got the best goalkeeper in the world? His journey since leaving Arsenal and watching David Raya, who looks nervy to me and looked even more nervy in person, actually being at the ground. McGinn Martinez is on some journey, Greg. You mentioned McGinn's journey. McGinn Martinez is on a journey here, isn't he?
Yeah, and look, just to go a little bit deeper on journeys while we're mentioning that, that is how Villa were recruiting for a couple of years. They were saying, look, we're not a top 5 or 6 Premier League team yet, but we have ambitions to be there, and we're in a hurry to get there. So you come to us, you come and play for us. We'll make you a Premier League player. You'll play regular. If you play well, you'll get into your international team, and then you've got the chance of playing for a very big club with an esteemed history, brilliant fan base, and a club that is going places. You can be a part of this journey. Now they did that with quite a few players, and if you look at the players that have gone on to become internationals, there's a fair few. Kamara's one, Buendia's another, Matt Cash, Ollie Watkins, Tyrone Mings, Ezri Konsa now, although he hasn't featured. And McGinn Martinez is another. One of the things he was desperate to be was Argentina's number 1. And to think, just 3 years ago, whenever it was, he wasn't even playing for Argentina, and now he's been inspirational in a Copa America and World Cup win. And now he's in a title challenging Premier League team. So I love Martinez's attitude. Yeah, he's a bit arrogant, but that's what makes him brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember I've interviewed him a couple of times, and I like his arrogance. I like the fact that he believes in himself. He believed that Villa could go on and become a bigger club, and he wanted to be a part of the journey. One thing I do remember interviewing, one thing he used to say to me when doing interviews was that one of his biggest strengths was actually kicking out with his hands. He doesn't do that very often anymore, just because of the way Villa play. But it would be interesting to see if ever he did start doing that. A little bit like Alisson does at Liverpool to set Salah free and really catch them on the counter. It'd be interesting if he does that a bit more. But okay, he was caught out, wasn't he, trying to do that at Bournemouth? But they went and scored. But yeah, he has become a better goalkeeper at Villa. There was a lot made previously about his relationship with Neil Cutler. Well, his relationship with Javi, the current goalkeeper, coach is very, very strong. He invited him to the ceremony for when he became the best goalkeeper in the world officially. And a lot of the work he's doing is new and inventive and different, and it's making him a better goalkeeper. He's just, I say this every week, but he makes a world-class save every week. He's incredible.
Yeah, you mentioned the kicking out of his hands. That was actually a tactic that was noticeably different from Villa on Saturday compared to Wednesday. Man City was all building up from the back and keeping that control and playing short. It seemed like it was a massive part of the game plan as well that Villa wouldn't do that against Arsenal, maybe to try and surprise them for a bit in case they hadn't prepped for it, it felt. But to go over the top and try and exploit that pace and hurt Arsenal in that way. And, by and large, actually, when we did do that, it did make Arsenal look uncomfortable. So this is what I love. We're talking on the fly here. We don't really prep anything. We just come on and have a chat. But this is what I love. That I've said this on numerous outlets as well. That that off the ball setup is exactly the same every single week. But there's so many different things from one game to the next that they do that form part of the plan. And you mentioned the kickoff. Attacking the hole. That's part of the game plan. They wanted to do that and start fast. And it makes me just think, and this is a stupid way of looking at it, but I feel like every other manager I've ever watched for Villa, did they have a plan? Because I never used to notice all these things. I notice so much now with Villa. It's actually made me better at talking about football, being a Villa fan now, because I feel like, never mind the players learning, I feel like I learn something every single week I watch Villa.
And look, if you go back to Emery's very early time at Villa, he almost said that he had to try and educate the supporters, didn't he? If you remember, he did have to teach the fans that, look, this is the way we're going to play. You got to believe in me. It might take a little bit of time, but in the long run, I expect it will be good. And it has. Look, I know the players, they really enjoy working with him because of there's a lot of buy-in there now because they know now. They know that they're working with an elite level manager. So anything he says, they know he's pretty much good for their game. And there are little tweaks here and there. It'll be a case of sometimes not attacking with any more than 3 players in front of the ball. Sometimes Villa play with more of a 5-man defence, don't they? And a 4-man defence. And sometimes Kamara drops back a little bit deeper and McGinn often goes more towards the left rather than staying in the centre a little bit. It's just all these little tweaks and just trying to find weaknesses in the opposition. But it will be a case of, I think what's really impressive with Villa that they keep winning is because the recovery time, A, for the players and B, for the coaches to prepare for each opponent is so short now that whereas last year they had sort of 7, sometimes 8 days to prepare for a game. So, you can do a lot of deep analysis on opponents and find ways to get the better of them. Now it's just a lot more rushed. But they're still finding those areas. It's working so well.
It's about the marginal gains, isn't it? Even from like the set pieces, there's different things that you see every single game. You'll never see the same set piece routine from game to game. Although we did see Luis shooting from corners quite consistently at one point, but I think that was under Gerrard. In fairness, but you never even see the same set piece routine. Watkins was very high up the pitch against Manchester City, but against Arsenal in the first half in particular, it was drop deep, keep dropping deep, pull defenders with, Tielemans' positioning as well. It references this in the athletic tactics piece, actually. And Tielemans, the way he was positioning himself, was forcing Gabriel to come and play higher and press. And, that was part of Villa's goal. That goal, you touched on it briefly before. And nearly every player in the team has touched the ball in the build-up to that goal. But I watched it back again this morning, and what impressed me the most is that as soon as Villa get past the halfway line, everything's so precise. No player has to break stride to receive the ball at any point until it gets to John McGinn in the box and he swivels on it and scores. That's not easy. That's rhythmic. That comes with work on the training ground. That comes with knowing exactly where, the relationships that you have with each other on the pitch. You don't see many goals like that, but I feel like for Villa, you see that kind of pullback goal quite a lot. But the fact that, Bailey, Tielemans, none of them had to break stride at any point. That's not easy. That is such good football.
That's hours and hours and weeks and months of practicing certain patterns of play on the training ground. It will come into match day -3 maybe if they have a normal week. They will look at doing things like that. And it will be bang on the training ground, half a pitch, working on attacking movements with mannequins in the way and certain players going through various areas. And on the training pitch, it is as easy as it looked on the match day, because all you have to do, if you know the exact movements, and it's drilled into your mind, which Emery does. Okay, the finish was a little bit different from McGinn. It was slightly behind him, and he had to sort of freestyle almost. But he does that brilliantly, doesn't he? That one foot turn and then the other shot. He's so good at that on the turn.
Unbelievable footballer.
He's so underrated. He's just so underrated. I mean, you speak to people who are just neutral football fans, and you say, "Tell me the best 5 midfielders in the Premier League on form right now." I bet none of them mention John McGinn. Whereas
I reckon I will now. I reckon I would now.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. I said again, I'm repeating myself from things I've said on other outlets, but I haven't spoke to you about it. McGinn now is almost, Villa, when Jack Grealish played well, Villa played well and usually got a result. When McGinn is in the game and on his game, and he's playing to the best of his ability, which he has been week in, week out at the moment, that everyone else raises to that level as well. And it feels like, he's as talismanic now for me as Jack Grealish. Villa are a better team than they were then in terms of the players that they have, but he is becoming that talisman that when he plays well, Villa play well. He dribble, all his numbers and his metrics for that game against Arsenal were ridiculous. He made the most tackles, most dribbles, most presses. He does everything. We talk about Douglas Luiz doing everything as a number 6 now in his position. McGinn's doing everything as an attacking midfielder, really, because he's scoring goals as well. And he wasn't really getting those goals last season.
No. He's hitting the headlines because he's getting goals, but
right foot, left foot as well.
Yeah, he's brilliant. It's that. I love that finish. But the finish for the goal, he does that a lot in the middle of the park as well. It doesn't often get as noticed. One touch with the 1 foot and then turns and moves up the way, spins away. Brilliant footballer. Doesn't like training, so it's interesting to see what he's like day to day in midweek, because he lives for the match day. And but look, under Emery, everybody's had to change a little bit. But yeah, he's in your face, isn't he? He's somebody you want on your team. He's strong and he's purposeful, but he's got a bit of he's got a lot of quality as well. And yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong here, and people do recognise him, but I just feel like he's never really in the conversations too much, and I don't know why that is. Is it because he doesn't play for England? Maybe and he's Scottish instead, and we don't see him so often on an international fixture. I don't know.
He's doing it for Scotland though as well, isn't he? He's doing a massive part of them as well.
Yeah, but yeah. He is. Yeah. I'm just not sure why he doesn't get talked about as much, because for me, he's brilliant.
I know because I do the Who Scored weekly podcast. I think he might even be top of the Who Scored form rankings at the moment across the entirety of the Premier League. So everything they measure games by. I think over the last 6 games, he's got the highest average rating across the whole Premier League. He was second a few weeks ago to Haaland, actually, but I'm imagining now he's actually usurped him and overtaken him. We are going to wrap this up soon, but before we do, let's hear a little bit more about our sponsors, NordVPN. 1874 is proudly sponsored by NordVPN, so when the Villa are playing and you can't watch it, we want to help you. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile and your smart television. So if you want to watch some live content, it allows you to appear like you're in another country. And whilst you're connected, no one else can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy for you. As part of NordVPN supporting 1874, they have given us an exclusive deal of up to 65% off and 4 months for free. This also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you've got to do is go to 1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details are also in the description. As always, we're very grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight, but if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help keep the channel running and help us. As I say, we will wrap the pod up soon, but just we've referenced yours and Jacob's article in The Athletic this morning. Yeah, it came out this morning. The article came out this morning. We've referenced it and we've spoke about a few little bits and pieces in this pod that were in that article, but the article does go into much more detail, doesn't it? There's a fair few things. There's things I definitely didn't know in that article about Villa's prep and build-up and how they approach that week.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, it's probably Villa's biggest week, maybe since they got promoted.
Maybe ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's been a huge week for Villa, and typically what we tend to do at the Athletic when really big occasions, on really big occasions or after really big moments, we go into a lot of detail about some things behind the scenes. So yeah, go and have a read of that. There's a lot more in there about how Emery prepares for things. About some of the previous transfer windows on who Villa went for, and some of the decision making process really. And yeah, going into January, I wonder whether Villa will be interested in signing any more players or whether they even need any.
Yeah, I'm still in the camp of I don't think Villa need much, one absolute maximum, but I actually don't think Villa would do any business. I know Jacob wrote a few weeks ago, maybe right back. They're looking to get a right back in. I'm assuming if they did that because of squad size and registration quotas, they'd probably have to move Chambers on and get someone who's going to compete a little bit more because Chambers is purely backup at the moment. Before we wrap up, though, Brentford on Sunday, historically not been a great place for Villa to go over the years. But Emery's got rid of so many hoodoos now, but Villa will be doing it without a couple of players because Louise and Luca Dean both picked up their 5th bookings of the campaign. But, Morena to come in, Tielemans will probably move back in, and he's been playing really, really well. I have a special word for Dendoncker, actually, because he barely played. I was shocked to see him enter the fray against Arsenal. He actually did really well when he came on as well. That shows as well, doesn't it? Just complete buy-in from the players that someone who hasn't played really for months just comes on against Arsenal and doesn't look out of place.
Yeah, or maybe, look, I don't know the full story with Dendoncker, but I can presume he'd be a bit frustrated of not playing too often. So it's more about his quality, I'd say, rather than the buy-in, that he comes on and shows that he can do a job still. I mean, you'd probably put him and Chambers up towards the top of the list of potential outgoings, wouldn't you? In January, you'd have thought.
As well.
Although saying that, would you want to leave Villa if they're pushing for a title? Then you got the chance of potentially getting a Premier League winners medal. There aren't going to be many moving in a hurry, are there?
No, I don't think so. That'll be the only way I think Villa do business if they manage to recoup a little bit of money.
Yeah. And look, we spoke last week on the pod about them needing to be a bit more creative to get some money back into the club, and I'm sure they will do that over the next couple of transfer windows. But yeah, it's a great position for Villa to be in, to not really need to buy any players. I do think maybe one sprinkling of magic up front, if they could, just to help them, in the second half of the season would be useful if they can find the right guy to do that. Might just take a little bit of the pressure off Watkins, over the course of a full season. But yeah, Brentford away, a place that Villa have struggled at previously. I don't fear too many problems this weekend. If you look at the fixture list as well, actually, if you look at the fixture list now, I mean, Villa are pretty well. Look, no fixture is easy, of course. We have to caveat with that, but they're in a good position to kick on now, and it's more towards the latter weeks of the season that look really difficult. And if Villa are right there going into, say, like March time, it could be such an exciting finish to the season.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have said, Spurs and Bournemouth away, and then Man City and Arsenal. There's that something again. Then Man City and Arsenal at home. For Villa to come out with 10 points, that's some return. That's a tricky period.
Yeah, it's a brilliant return. It's title winning. It's title winning form. Like I said last week, I thought Villa would be pleased with a point out of the two games.
Outrageous.
And I mean, look how ridiculous that looks now. But I still think a point would have been good. As mad as that sounds, I do still think a point would have been a good return out of those.
I said I'd have taken 2, didn't I? 2.
Yeah. But you were going for 6.
Always going for 6, Greg. And Villa got 6. What a brilliant week it's been to be a Villa fan. Just feel absolutely on top of the world at the moment, and look forward to every game. There's a nice bonus game on Thursday in Europe as well for some people to get some minutes, which might help as we enter the frantic Christmas period. Thanks ever so much much for tuning in and watching or listening to this podcast. Wherever you do ingest or digest, I don't know what the right word is, this show, then make sure you're doing all the stuff that helps us, like liking, commenting, subscribing. All that stuff really helps our channel. Be back with a match preview show. We'll probably skip over the European game, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I'm at Sky Sports News on Thursday, so I don't know whether we'll get anything done before that game, but we will be doing a preview on Friday ahead of Villa's trip to Brentford, and then Gregg and myself will be back on Monday to do this show again. Thanks for all the support you're giving the channel and this show. We know people really do enjoy this weekly pod, and we thank you ever so much. Thank you to Adam for producing, and thank you to NordVPN for continuing to sponsor us. Have a great week, and up the Villa.